Time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornblut, Will Polak, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We are back with you, only away for 22 hours. That's not all that bad, so you can relax and refresh your brain and get ready to join us here for the next couple of hours as we continue our trip around the state of South Carolina. It is stop number 6 of the Palmetto Pigskin Tour for 2018. We are in beautiful Clinton, South Carolina. Let's get the pronunciation correct.
All there, all there.
We are at lovely Presbyterian College with the Blue Hose, one of the historical football teams in our state. You know, if things go well for Presbyterian this football season, they can hit the 500 mark in total victories. They sit on 494, been playing football since 1913. So we'll see if Coach Tommy Spangler and his guys can hit that magical mark this season. We'll have Coach Spangler with us along with a couple of the standout players for the Blue Hose, senior tight end Riley Hilton out of Nation Ford, and senior defensive end Jicey Yeldell. I have been practicing that for a half hour, and I nailed it. Jicey Yeldell. What's harder, the first name or the last name?
The two together.
Jicey Yeldell from Silver Bluff, defensive end. He'll be joining us as well after the top of the hour. Coach will be with us also. So looking forward to the Blue Hose. More on the Gamecocks and the Tigers today as they continued their workouts. No new media today with Clemson, but plenty of new media today with the Gamecocks. Will was over there, and he'll fill us in on all that in just a moment. Our phone number, 800-956-7266. If you want to join us, grab a line. We'll get to you early. 800-956-7266. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. So, Mr. P,
sir,
you were over there with the Gamecocks today, and they brought you a bunch of offensive players.
Well, it was our last chance to talk to offensive players today, Corn, before the beginning of game week. Originally, we were supposed to get players for the first couple days of next week, but if you may or may not know this, coming to Columbia is the big storm. And no, I'm not talking about a storm of weather, the storm of Beyonce and Jay-Z. And because of that, they have condensed our opportunities to talk to players to today and tomorrow. So tomorrow will be the last time we actually get players on the defensive side of the football before game week. We'll talk to Will Muschamp on Saturday. But, yes, our last chance is at least to speak with a lot of the principal offensive players, including Jake Bentley and Deebo Samuel, Rico Dowdle, and the like, and we'll sprinkle those across the next week and a half or so while we don't necessarily have any new chances to talk to the players. But we were able to at least delve some more into what happened during Monday's scrimmage. It was mostly dominated by South Carolina's running attack. The four principal scholarship running backs, namely Rico Dowdle, A.J. Turner, Tyson Williams, and Mon Denson, all scored touchdowns. Dowdle had one that was very much a long run for him, and we're starting to see him kind of garner a lot more of the plaudits, including from running backs coach Bobby Bentley, who we also spoke to today. And the one thing he said to Korn that I think is really interesting is the fact that, they don't necessarily consider themselves a team that's a running back by committee team. He said they had to kind of go to that by necessity last year because of all the injuries. But if Bobby had his druthers, he would want to see one of these 3 or 4 guys who are jockeying for position really stand up and take the bull by the horns.
Well, he says that, but if you understand Will Muschamp, he said you can't get through an SEC season with one back. You better have a ton of them. And with these backs, they make defensive coordinators think. A.J. Turner comes in the game, he can stand there, and then they can go to an empty back set and just go, 4 or 5 wide. And then, you get Rico Dowdle in there, the most complete back I think they have. Pass protection, receiver out of the backfield, and running hard. And Tyson Williams is the kind of guy that he has small guys moves, but that's a huge guy for a running back.
We did see at least a little bit more on the injury front with JT eBay putting pads on in addition to the yellow non-contact jersey. Same for Jalen Dickerson. The safety position continues to be one of tremendous attrition. Nick Harvey has been basically working exclusively at safety for the Gamecocks. Eldridge Thompson was also practicing in yellow today. And today was the first day in full pads, Korn, for Josh Belk, the very much well-spoken about and highly talked about defensive tackle, the transfer from Clemson. Zach Bailey, who we talked to today, the, of course, guard who will probably see a lot of him, said that he's a hard one to move, and even said that even though he didn't necessarily go up against him, he saw some of the second-team guys going up against him earlier in camp, and they were having some hard times moving him around, and he at least showed some endurance in the first day of full pads for him.
That's a good sign. Remember, this is a guy that was highly acclaimed coming out of high school, out of Louisville, and went to the Army All-American game. And according to the folks there who watched practice, he put on a big-time show. And, of course, went on to Clemson. Things didn't work out for him there. Man, would that be a bonus for the Gamecocks if they could get him eligible immediately. They could really use his big body and strength right in the middle of their defensive line. So you met with the offensive guys today, defensive guys tomorrow, and then no availability on Friday, Saturday after the scrimmage. Muschamp will meet with the media, and then that is it.
Done
until his weekly press conference, except for his call-in show on August 23rd. But in terms of meeting with the media that covers the program, nothing until Tuesday, August 28th, game week. So they'll be practicing behind the Iron Curtain for the most part there for several days until we get another sniff about what's going on.
Yeah, and tomorrow is the last day that we'll at least be able to see the stretching in the first 3 periods. We got to see about 5 or 6 of those. For Clemson, they do it for basically the way they do it at Clemson is a little different. They have less days, but they'll keep the practice open longer. So you'll get to see like 8 periods in the final viewing day for Clemson, which is, I believe, next Tuesday, the 21st. But yeah, mostly after these next couple of days for both these programs, they kind of go behind the go behind the curtain, like you said, and really start preparing for their opponents, Coastal Carolina and Furman and the like.
I tell you what, if they're not careful, I'm talking about the media. There was not going to identify the source, but there was one outlet covering South Carolina today that got very descriptive in what the Gamecocks are doing out there in terms of an actual play call and formations and things like that. And
ultra
you know how
specific.
paranoid these people are. If the coaches see that and read that, you'll be lucky to ever get back inside those ropes.
Well, it's weird. Like, and I've even talked about this. I really don't understand the paranoia with the coaches and the way this goes, but usually there's some sort of guideline involving, hey, you can't really talk about anything other than, variations of personnel groups and things of that nature. You can't necessarily go in and say, oh, so-and-so, who's usually a quarterback is lining up at wide receiver and they threw a wide receiver reverse pass and all this kind of crap. So, I mean, there's some level of decorum that usually takes place with those kind of things, but who knows? It's going to be not for long, but we don't get to see anything like the folks at LSU. The folks at LSU have the thing down. They let them talk at the beginning, and then they don't see a damn thing for the rest of August until their practices get the game week.
Now, we saw two quarterbacks depart LSU, Justin McMillan and Lowell Narcissus. Both announced they are transferring, so that leaves them very low on quarterbacks going into the season. And speaking of LSU, Clemson announced today that Clemson and LSU have agreed to home-and-home football games in 2025 and 2026. Clemson also announced a game at home against Troy in 2025. So in 2025, Clemson will play LSU in Death Valley on August 30th, and then on September 6th, we'll play Troy in Death Valley. And then the Tigers in 2026 will go to LSU and play in that Death Valley on September 5th. Game times and television will be announced later, but I have learned that ESPN plus will be televising those games at a cost of $75 per game.
So wait.
And, of course, by then, ESPN over the air will be dead and gone. It'll just be ESPN multiple plus.
So the games in 2025 and 2026 are both in Clemson because you said Death Valley.
Yeah, Frank, how I feel.
Memorial Stadium.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We are also keeping an eye here on Sports Talk of the U.S. Amateur out at Pebble Beach. There is a Gamecock in the match play field in the final 64. Ryan Stackler, Milton, Georgia native and rising senior on the Gamecock golf team. He is trailing by 1 hole against Andrew Algood, of St. John's, Florida, who is the number 3 ranked player in the tournament. They have just made the turn. They're through 10. Algood is 1 up. A couple of South Carolina natives also in this, but they are Georgia Bulldogs. So we will at least give you that. Trevor Phillips, who won 4-3 over Michael Thorbjornsen, who gets himself obviously a loss there after what happened there with the junior amateur having won that earlier in the proceedings. And Trent Phillips, his brother, also out of Inman, wins 3-2 over Riley Elms. Tonight is also an SC Wild night, so we want to make sure that you're aware of that. In the second hour from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, Captain Billy Donner will be with us. Corn, just looking at the on the Clemson LSU front with the future schedules, one of the things that Clemson had been trying to do, and Dad Renikovich has spoken to this, they've been talking both with LSU and Georgia, and with the LSU series in 2025 and 2026, that could basically pave the way for a similar type of agreement with Georgia. The only qualm is if it was Clemson having their druthers, they'd want to get that home Georgia portion in 2021 because they have South Carolina on the road in 2021 versus the 2024 where they have them at home. Though Georgia has kind of the same problem. Their game, the rivalry game against Georgia Tech out of conference, also on the road in 2021 while they were at home at Sanford Stadium in 2024. So either work out a home and home that way or possibly play a couple of games in Atlanta if they can squeeze it in that time period.
Yeah, it makes sense. But again, you don't want to overload your schedule. No matter how good your program happens to be. And it makes sense to, this LSU Clemson game, if you consider that both teams should still be at a very high place in their respective leagues and nationally, though I'm not so sure about LSU. I don't know if that program is going to take off under Orgeron or not. I have my doubts, to be quite honest with you, but we shall see. He might not even be the coach there by that time when the series rolls around. That's so many years away. I do expect that, based on what we're seeing, that Clemson's not going anywhere and will be right there among the national elite. That'll make for a very interesting early season in August, of course, first game of the year, national television and all that. Limited history between the two. They've only played 3 times, all in bowl games. And so it's the first time they will have played in the regular season in their 2 stadiums. So that'll be fun. And, of course, everybody will be talking about, well, who's got the real Death Valley? Is it in Clemson or is it in Baton Rouge? Chris Lowe from ESPN, after this thing was announced from Clemson, put together a composition of upcoming home-and-home series that look really, really good. So you've got Alabama, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Nebraska, Tennessee, Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State, Washington, Michigan, Washington, Penn State, Auburn, Georgia, UCLA, LSU, UCLA, Wisconsin, UCLA, Michigan, UCLA. So these are the kind of matchups college football fans really want to see, and it's what Saban hinted about at SEC Media Days, and that is let's do away with these lopsided money games against the lower level teams, and let's everybody play Power 5 teams and Power 5 games against one another. And the committee will be understanding when it comes to the playoff time. If you lose 1 or 2 of those games, yet go ahead and win your conference, regular season, and championship game, it shouldn't hurt you that much when it comes to the consideration for the playoff.
I just don't like when it goes to a neutral site, because I think that, number one, is a cop-out for the teams, but also I don't like taking a home game away from the fans. That thing, to me, taking it away from a college stadium, I mean, no offense to the folks in Atlanta and Charlotte and Orlando who want to have and stage these games, Jerry World, same thing. Leave that for after the season. In my mind, regular season college football should be played in the college football stadiums. Call me a purist. I don't care. throw rocks.
Well, let me add something to you. If I'm recruiting, one of my recruiting bases is Atlanta, Georgia, I want to play there. I don't care if it's a neutral site game or whatever. I want my team there.
I prefer having the atmosphere. I just said just as soon get the recruits to come on an official visit to the game at Death Valley.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think I've never been a big believer that, going to a location for a couple of days and playing a game
makes no sense.
Is a big boost to your recruiting. I mean, in the way today's recruiting works, you're recruiting year round. Guys are coming and going off campus multiple times. I just don't think it has the kind of impact that people do think.
I want them to see my atmosphere. I want them to see my jazzed up stadium for a highly publicized game of that nature.
How about if you're talking about recruiting? Suppose you go in, the best defensive lineman in the country is from Atlanta, and you say, well, we're going to play in Atlanta next year. Well, you are?
I don't think it makes that big of a difference.
I just tell them.
Corn, for every person, there's something that sweetens the pot.
Well, I know that, but I just, especially if you're talking about Clemson, Atlanta's not a big deal. It's only 90 minutes away.
Well, we weren't talking about Clemson. I thought we were just talking about
in general.
Team.
Well, who else from the Southeast is really that far away from Atlanta? Now, if you're talking about Oregon or Southern Cal or Ohio State coming into Atlanta and you're thinking that's going to help you in recruiting in that area just for a quick stopover, I just don't see it.
Washington's playing in Atlanta opening week of the season against Auburn. I mean, do you really think that they're going to get some sort of high windfall just because a team out of the Northwest, spends 3 days in
we're ganging up on you, pro. We're ganging up on you. What you going to do about it?
Well, all I can tell you is this.
This is the most odds.
Georgia had one of the best quarterbacks in the world supposedly from the state of Washington.
It's true,
but they didn't play in Atlanta. Well, they didn't. I'm sorry, they didn't go out to Washington and end up with the guy.
They didn't go up to Seattle and play a neutral site game in the Kingdome.
They didn't need to because he kept seeing Georgia on the SEC network.
It's true.
All right, couple of other quick notes. 800-956-7266 is our number if you want to join us. The Citadel has announced its new athletics director, and they didn't have to look very far to find this man. It was the man serving as the interim AD since mid-July, and his name is Mike Capaccio. He had been the vice president for athletic development at the Citadel Foundation, and he will be the school's new AD. The story was actually broken prior to the release by Jeff Hartzell at the Charleston Post and Courier. Before the Citadel, he worked 8 years at Wilmington, 3 years as AD. He was dismissed by Wilmington in 2007 after Wilmington and Brad Brownell could not agree on a contract extension, and Brownell left Wilmington for Wright State. Capaccio joined the Citadel in 2012, and so he now takes over. And, I should have known it was coming because they've got the Citadel Brigadier football kickoff golf tournament tomorrow, in which I will be participating. And they always like to have their people in place before that takes place. So no surprise that they make that announcement today. Also from Clemson today, non-football related, the basketball team is going to represent the United States at the World University Games in 2019 from July 3rd through July 14th in Naples, Italy. That was announced today, an event that's held every 2 years since the U.S. began participation in 1965. So that's certainly a nice deal for Clemson.
Yeah, there's 3 teams that have done so before. Sometimes they'll put together just an all-star team. Other times they will allow a team to use this as their once every 4 years international tour stop, and that's how Brad Brownell wants to at least use that. So they will basically use that as their trip for their team. The other 3 that have done so, Northern Iowa in 2007, Kansas in 2015, and Purdue last year in 2017.
All right, very good. Break is coming up here on Sports Talk. 800-956-7266 is our number. We're on the Palmetto Pigskin Tour tonight. We're in Clinton at Presbyterian College. We'll have coach and players with us coming up in hour number 2. Tomorrow we will be in Charleston, and we'll have some of the Citadel folks with us as well. Perhaps the new AD will stop by and visit with us. And, Will, we've got plenty of USC and Clemson stuff coming up as well.
We do. We're going to talk to Dexter Lawrence from the Clemson defensive line coming up at the end of the hour. But coming up next, we'll hear from the South Carolina quarterback Jake Bentley on his development and the continuation of this overhaul for the South Carolina offense. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. I'm going to hear from the Gamecock quarterback, Jake Bentley, in a moment. Far be it for me to sound like I'm carrying the mail from my guy, Paul Feinbaum, Corn, but the story that seems to continue to not go away is anybody and their brother wanting to throw some shade on the head coach of the Gamecocks, Will Muschamp. Look, I understand where the journalistic community is coming from when it comes to bashing Muschamp when it comes to the use of anonymous sources. And again, I think people look at this whole story, and when we say anonymous sources, the sources are not anonymous to the people writing the story. They're just anonymous in the fact that they don't give up their name in the story in order for fear of retribution. I mean, I understand the disdain there. I just don't understand why people are continuing to hammer Muschamp when he at least said all the right things in my mind with response to the young man dying. I know he's not going to take that about journalists, but at the same time, it's like, why is this continuing to be perpetuated in my mind?
What was the exact quote from Feinbaum?
I have it right here. He said maybe he should go back and read all the President's Men to see how anonymous sources changed the course of history.
Right.
Which is fine.
So
fine.
Yeah, he's touching on that part of the argument. And, yeah, I think anybody in the media, any veteran in the media understands the use of and the importance of unnamed sources. So I do think that Muschamp was out of bounds with that comment. I just know there's no other way to spin it. He was out of bounds, out of school and out of bounds with that comment. Otherwise, the part about Durkin, I mean, I've stated how I view what he said there, and that is a guy who was defending a good friend, a guy who had his back for a coach. And I know that with the death in the program and the investigation going on and the possibly temporary suspension of Durkin, if not permanent, it makes Muschamp, in the eyes of many, look kind of stupid because you're supporting a guy who's in a bad situation. To me, he looks big. When you're willing to take the knives from people in the public, when you support a friend that you know well and you know that he's being perceived in the wrong manner, or he's being written about in the wrong manner, to me, that's a positive for a person, not a negative. So I think people need to get off his back about that. If you want to criticize him, if you're in the media and you want to take up for other media and point out that the use of anonymous sources is crucial to doing the business, I certainly understand that.
The one that gets me more ticked off, though, Corn, is the president with Harris Pastides, who basically kind of takes up for Muschamp and the whole anonymous sources thing. And I'm saying, aren't you an academic? Aren't you somebody who's supposed to lead an institution that, by the way, has a journalism program, like which is very, very close to your office and residence? Like that's the one that gets me angry. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that everyone needs to report how the journalistic process works. But, from the standpoint of where ESPN stands, and I know that they have a very polarizing people have a very polarizing opinion of them and the way they do business now these days. When you look at their hard journalism division, I'm not talking about what Screamin' A does on the television or some of these other talking heads and jerks that we see on the air. If you look at their hard journalism division, they are 99% of the time very spot on. There's only one time you can really point out and say that they were legit wrong, and that was the Duke lacrosse case, and that was because people lied. So from that perspective, ESPN's hard journalism division, especially their investigative reporters, are almost always proven right.
Well, you better be, because if you not, you put somebody's career in the balance.
And everything that gets written there from that perspective is written and vetted and double and triple and quadruple checked by a staff that's larger than most of the places that are attacking them. So from that perspective, it just doesn't get on the air or get on the website just as a result of these guys reporting. This needs to be run through a bunch of editors.
Mm-hmm. But
yeah,
then again,
absolutely. So I think it's a story now that has had its shelf life. Here it is. It's Wednesday. He made his comments back on Saturday. I know Feinbaum was on another show today and was asked about it, and he made his comments. But really, it's a dead issue now. He has come out for Durkin, and he's not going to back down from that, and he's not going to probably back down from his position about reporters, because head football coaches, when they pick a war with the media, they seldom back away from it. So right now he's moving on towards his football season, and if he beats Coastal Carolina and if he beats Georgia and gets off to a 2-0 start, he could criticize the Queen of England and people aren't going to care.
Well, I think they might want him to criticize the Queen of England, but as we do sit 2.5 weeks,
you got a problem with the Queen?
I've got no problem with the Queen. God save the Queen. God save our precious Queen. whatever, however
Yes.
the heck you say it.
And the Queen of Australia. I think we
Wow.
should be concerned about the future of the Queen of Australia.
She is more than fine. More than fine. The Gamecocks trying to make sure that they are fine by the time they take on Coastal Carolina 2.5 weeks from now. Here's the quarterback of the Gamecocks, Jake Bentley.
Well, I mean, coach immediately wants you out. That's kind of his big thing. If you can't hold on to the ball, protect the ball, you're coming out. So that's the main thing. And then whether it be up downs at end of practice or just extra sprints or something, whatever Coach BMAC can think of. And beginning of fall camp, they really brought it to us. And Montech especially does a great job of coming in and just getting the ball out off of people. And I think we've gotten better at it. For me, it's trying to stay away from me. But I mean, as far as running backs, it gets hard when they break a tackle and they start to run again, and that's usually when the secondary guys come in and try to punch it out. And that gets hard. You just got to put focus on the 6 points of pressure with the ball and just try to just keep it tight.
How hard is it to balance the fact that, like, when you're in practice, the defense makes a good play? It's good for the whole, but it doesn't make your group necessarily look the best.
Yeah, I mean, you got to understand the defense is going to make some plays too. I mean, obviously, each and every day you want to come out there and not have any turnovers or any bad plays. But there's a lot of great athletes over there too, and a lot of smart players with, some of the best coaches in the nation on defense. So, it's a challenge every day to go against them. But it makes us better, and we make them better.
I know when we talked to Dan, he talked about your footwork and your importance of doing that when the way this offense has gone. How have you taken the steps in the right direction there?
Yeah, just trying to clean stuff up. I mean, whether it be in the pass game to become more accurate or just in the run game, making sure we got good meshes with the running backs. Just everything we do is important. And that's one of them.
Jake, who among the receivers has particularly shined in camp? Who's looked really good?
Well, just having, Debo 100%, obviously he's made some big plays for us. Brian continues to be, just a solid, just consistent guy, a great player. And but one guy that's elevated his game even more than last year is Shy Smith. I think he's made some plays that you just kind of go, wow, like it's a big-time play.
How much more open does the field look when Debo's on the field?
Well, yeah, I mean, defenses, they got to make a decision on what they're going to do. Whether they play man-to-man or try to double them or just play zone. So it makes it a little easier to decipher in that aspect. But it's going to be interesting to see teams now know how productive he can be and see what they do to try to limit him. Really outstanding play.
The way the offense played this past scrimmage?
I think run game wise, I mean, we probably A+. I mean, I think it was I think every running back scored, whether that be in the air or in the run game, mostly in the run game. Just the holes that the line was able to produce and make some really big holes for us. And it was really good. Pass game wise, it was okay. It was okay. We hit some big plays, missed a few things. So I think there's some things we got to clean up. But overall, pretty good day.
It's Jake Bentley, and again, that was a big part of him. I mean, you remember early in some of those games, Corn, he would throw some things high. His footwork, he got a little happy feet, and they really have calmed him down in the pocket.
Yeah, that's what they've been working on. And, I mean, his completion percentage needs to go up. His touchdown numbers need to go up. His interceptions need to come down. If he does all that, he's going to have a heck of a year. With that receiving core, with what I perceive as an improved offensive line, I don't see why this guy can't be a 2,500-yard, 25-touchdown passer for them this year.
Back to Clemson we go. We'll talk to one of the big four, the Power Rangers inside that defensive line, Dexter Lawrence, when we come back on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, Willie Corn, not Willie Corn. Willie, comma, Corn, comma, and the pro.
You wish you were as beloved as Willie Corn. Not even close.
We're brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, whether it's low rates, high rewards, using Founders credit cards on clothes, school supplies, a new computer, even college tuition will help prepare your kids for the first day of school. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/visa. Why are people the way they are? This Lawrence, I swear, man, no one mentions CNN. He tweets us at SportsTalkSC. You gents need to get off your high horse. Journalism is dead. CNN hasn't published anything true in 20 years. Granted, the sports media is not as corrupt, but a lot of garbage gets published. You know, these people who think that we're the enemy of the people, like come on, guys. We're trying to do an entertainment show here.
Listen. You know, Lawrence is a regular visitor and contributor, and 99.9% of what he posts is negative. Okay, I mean, we could talk about somebody.
I thought you were going to say hogwash.
Well, that too, but I mean, we could tweet out that somebody has cured cancer, and he'd wonder why they haven't cured Lou Gehrig's disease. I mean, he can't find anything positive to say about most anything that we post. And what he's talking about is that's politics. We're talking football. We're talking one man defending another man who he's close to, who's his friend. I don't even his comments on Saturday, I don't even know why people got upset that he didn't reference what had happened in the program. We all know what happened in the program. This is what I'm talking about. People get mad because they expect you to repeat something that they already know. Why should he repeat what is already well known? He didn't have to come out and say, yes, I recognize that there was a death in the program. Yes, I recognize that they're under investigation. He was talking about his good friend Durkin. I get that. I understand that. Where I think he strayed, of course, is when he ventured into criticizing, and this carries across the national landscape of reporters, and nobody and your biggest talkers in national media are going to be responding to this. Your Dan Walkins and Feinbaums and Dan Patrick, they're all going to fire back, and they have their audiences that hear that, and that makes for you a bit of a national problem. But
it exposes you. It's exposure. It's not the kind of exposure you want either.
No, you don't want to have to deal with that right now.
If you missed any of our interviews online, you can check them out from SportsTalkSC.com on the Gamecocks. Jake Bentley, Brian Edwards, Debo Samuel, Rico Dowdle, AJ Turner, and running backs coach Bobby Bentley. We'll sprinkle some of these over the next couple of days. As again, we are going to hit a bit of a dead period as far as being able to talk to the Gamecocks and Tigers, so we'll get you a chance to hear from some of those. Clemson on the practice field today, Corn. In between scrimmages, they had a situational scrimmage yesterday. They will have their final scrimmage of fall camp tomorrow.
Right, indeed. And earlier in the camp, we had a chance to hear from several of the players, including Dexter Lawrence, the big defensive tackle, the All-American selection, et cetera, a sure first-round pick in the draft in 2019. He played really with a bad injury last season, and he wasn't able to be himself. And he met with the media earlier in camp and shared with everybody that he's now healthy and ready to be the Dexter Lawrence everybody wants to see.
Last year around this time, I had a club foot. Basically, that's what Christian calls it. But right, I can get on my toes again. I can bounce on them. I can move, getting my speed back. So I'm feeling good.
At what point during the spring or summer did you finally start to feel 100%?
Probably like a month before camp. Yeah, so that last summer session, started getting, running, keeping up with the guys in the sprints, things like that. So that's probably when I first realized it. I was in the training room. I was walking. I was getting on my toes. I was like, oh, okay. It kind of came out of nowhere, but I guess over all the time I was still building my strength. Just the feeling just came back.
How limited were you last year, and I guess how hard was it to try to play through some of that?
Yeah, I'd say I was about 45-50% last season. Yeah, but now I'm feeling much better. Yeah, and it's a big turnaround for me. It's a blessing. I got a little down. I didn't know if it was going to ever come back, so I just kept with it, and now it's coming back more.
What exactly was it that was limiting you? What exactly was it?
I had got a nerve block during surgery, and like it had irritated some of my nerves in my leg and my foot, so it took a while to come back, rejuvenate. Yeah.
You ever dealt with like any kind of injury like that?
No. I never dealt with nothing that serious. I always had like rolled up ankles or hand, but nothing that serious. So I mean, I just had all the guys, every guy on the team was on my side, pushing me through it, make sure I go to rehab, keep me accountable, things like that. So
when you're trying to play through that pain, I guess what's going through your head? What's it like, and how much pain were you feeling?
I just made it more a mental game then. I wasn't there all the way physically, so I had to work on different things like my knowledge, my hands. I couldn't move my feet that well, so it was just more the upper body things that I had to try to focus on and get better at. And then, like, once I got these back over the summer, I just started working on that again.
So you think people can expect the best version of Dexter Lawrence at Clemson this year?
That's what I'm trying to give them.
Some of the guys you're playing with, some of the new guys coming in, Darnell Jeffries, guys like that.
Especially Jordan Williams, yes, especially. Yeah. You see, from day one in camp to now, they both improving. They both struggle, strength-wise in the run game. Now they get knocked back every time, an inside run or in team. And they both just play with their hands pretty well. Like a lot of guys coming in don't do that too much, but you see the potential in them.
Any other young guys on the defense that have impressed you early on?
Niles and Albert, they playing really well. They know they got new roles to play more, to try to play more this year. So they both are accepting it and just going at it each and every day. Like Albert this summer, that's the best I've seen him since I've been here. He seemed very determined and ready to go get it.
Clemson D tackle Dexter Lawrence and Corn. My friend Ross Taylor, the Clemson Sports Information Director, tells us on Twitter that the Coach Sweeney lined them up for post-practice sprints today and basically got them out of it by blowing the, quote, just kidding whistle and saying that they can come in and break it down. So now we've reached the point in camp where coaches are starting to pull back on the gas pedal.
Yeah, a little morale booster there. When you're tired and you've been through a hard workout and you think you've got sprints to do and the coach comes in and says, nah, boys, go hit the showers. That's a little boost for you.
After he talks to you for about a 45-minute, diatribe, because he likes to talk now.
Yeah, well, you can get a little nap in while that's going on. Well, what you do is you put your sunglasses on. You put your sunglasses on and close your eyes, take a little nap. He can't tell that you're sleeping. True. And that's what I do all the time when there's people I'm talking to I don't want to listen to. I just put the sunglasses on and act like I'm listening and take a nap.
Go ahead.
Which is why I wear my sunglasses so much around the studio.
I was going to say, I was waiting for that.
All right, to recruiting, and some guys are about to do their thing. Cornerback DJ Daniel of Georgia Military Junior College will announce commitment tomorrow, 2 o'clock in the school gym with his family, coaches, and teammates. Been considering USC, Georgia, and Kentucky. He said Tuesday night he has made up his mind, and he hasn't told the schools as of last night. As for what he based the decision on, he said, quote, my feeling, the defense scheme-wise, just me visiting those schools, me feeling the comfort of how my family felt comfortable, and the communications I had with the coaching staff, end quote. He heard from all 3 schools on Tuesday. From USC, Travaris Robinson's been heading up the Gamecocks recruiting efforts. He said they talk every day. He feels comfortable. He says he knows how I rock, and I know how he rocks. So we'll see what happens. He's from Griffin, Georgia. I'll say this. I mean, most people think he's picking Georgia. At one point, he told me that he was going to have a video done with the guy from one of the Georgia websites, Jeff Sintel, but now he's doing this family thing at his school. I mean, I don't know if that means anything in terms of looking outside of Georgia or he's just going to pick Georgia. We shall see. Defensive tackle Jacob Bandes of Antioch, California, will announce his commitment prior to his game on Friday night. He's never been to Clemson, but the Tigers are still in the mix as he mulls over his decision. He and Todd Bates have been in a lot of contact lately. Clemson, Colorado, Oregon, Illinois, Washington, Florida, Purdue on his final list. His announcement will be about 5 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. We'll be right back here on Sports Talk. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. One of USC's targets will come off the board tonight. Do that again. In 3, 2, 1. One of USC's targets will come off the board this afternoon. Cornerback DJ Daniel of Georgia Military Junior College will announce at 2 o'clock at the school gym he's considering USC, Georgia, and Kentucky. Clemson defensive line target Jacob Bandes of Antioch, California, will announce his decision around 5 o'clock Eastern time on Friday night before his season opening game. He's never been to Clemson, but he says that is not a factor as he mulls over his decision. Clemson, Colorado, Oregon, Illinois, Washington, Florida, and Purdue on his final list. In basketball, 6'3" Chase Hunter of Atlanta scheduled to visit Clemson on Thursday. This according to National Basketball Evaluator Samad Hines of Georgia. He's also set to visit Oklahoma and Georgia and plans to visit Michigan State and Virginia. Phil Kornbluth, South Carolina Radio Network Sports.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, on the Palmetto Pigskin Tour tonight at Presbyterian College. We're going to visit with the Blue Hose in just a second. There were 2 basketball notes I needed to get in from recruiting. 6'3" Chase Hunter of Atlanta is scheduled to visit Clemson tomorrow, according to National Basketball Evaluator Samad Hines, who resides in Georgia. He also has visits set with Oklahoma and Georgia and plans visits to Michigan State and Virginia. He's the son of Bryce Hunter. And 6'8" Stephen Clark of Indian Trail, North Carolina, committed to the Citadel. Now we turn our attention to the Presbyterian College Blue Hose. They're getting ready for the 2018 season. Coach Tommy Spangler looking totally in camp mode.
Yeah, I feel
eyes
like
and worn out.
that's just the way it is, Phil. You know, after a week and long hours, that's it. But, you know, this is 31 or 2 years. I keep forgetting on how many years I've done this. So I'm kind of in shape when it comes to this.
Well, you look good. You look good for
Appreciate
a football coach in camp. And listen, let's remind everybody, we know down the road the program is moving to non-scholarship Pioneer League, but you still have a couple of more years in the Big South to compete.
We do. You know, we're kind of a blend right now. You know, we did lose some scholarship guys for whatever reason they made to not come back and that. But we've got a great group of experienced older guys, quite a few still on scholarship. And then we brought in over 60 new walk-on freshmen. So, you know, it's like teaching calculus. I've got guys that have taken it, but I haven't got. I'm trying to teach guys that have never taken calculus. You know, and you got to be somewhere in between because you've got some veterans and then you got the other extreme.
When you're recruiting in a non-scholarship situation, which you are heading into, is it different?
It is. You know, this year I think because of the opportunity some of these guys saw coming in, Phil, to play in a very good league, the Big South. To get that kind of exposure, to be, you know, playing, like I said, in the Big South with a very good league. I think that attracted guys to come and knowing that they'd have a shot to contribute right away and so forth. But, you know, it's all based on some institutional monies, financial aid packages, good academics, that type thing. But you'd be surprised. I mean, we really have got some very good players that we've signed this year. And, I think, you know, there again, it takes development, it takes work, takes some time, those kind of things. But if they'll persevere and hang in there, I think they'll be good, very good players.
Football's football.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're still going to be running 11 out there on offense and defense and running schemes and hitting and tackling and all that. So in looking at your numbers from last season, it's a case where you could stand improvement on both sides of the football, offensively, defensively. Are you seeing that in camp?
Well, what I'm seeing, what's kind of standing out, because we do have some really good upperclassmen, veterans that are back in the program. I see our first group on both sides, our top 22, so to speak. I think we're going to be able to compete. I think we're going to be fine. I think we've got a chance to possibly be better, as crazy as things have happened around here. But after that, obviously, here comes some of these young pups that have come in and, you know, I kid with them. I don't know if they're still in Huggies or Pampers, you know, but they're still trying to learn. And, you know, to their credit, they've worked their fannies off and they're hanging in there. And, you know, it's hard. You know, we're in day 7 or so of camp. It's been round the clock. It's been long days. And, you know, those guys are hanging in and doing a good job.
What's going on with the offense? Looks like John Walker, a senior, might be emerging as the guy to run the offense.
Yeah, and, you know, John's had a couple starts throughout his career. In fact, beat Monmouth at home a couple years ago. So an experienced guy, got a lot of poise. You know, knows the offense, knows where to go with the ball, knows how to read it, that type thing. So, you know, I feel good about John Walker, no doubt.
What does he do well?
Well, you know, I think he manages the offense. I think he gets us in the right plays. He's got poise, like I said. I don't think there again, because he's a fifth-year guy and he's had some starts and he's kind of waited his turn. And I think he's looking forward to this opportunity. I think he's, you know, he's a poised guy that's going to run the show. I think a lot, the main thing in a quarterback's when those other 10 got a lot of confidence in you, and I think that's what we got going for us.
You lose a 1,000-yard rusher from last year. Those are precious in any offense. How do you replace that?
Yeah, we're gonna miss Torrance Marable that moved down to Coastal Carolina, and but we've got some very good young ones coming in, and we've got a guy that was actually injured last year, in Zola Davis, the son of Zola Davis that played at South Carolina,
right.
And he was kind of a H-back tight end type guy, but man, a good strong running back that I think he'll have a good year for us. Now, he didn't play last year, but I think he's anxious and getting ready to go.
Presbyterian head coach Tommy Spankler joining us here as our Palmetto Pigskin preview continues. How much of that running attack, or at least just how much of the creative ways, can you get a guy like Deshaun Davis the ball? He comes into the year, coach, as you know, highly touted, and I'm sure you're looking for any way to get the ball in that man's hands.
Yeah, and you know how offenses are now. I mean, even a guy in the slot is considered in a lot of ways a running back because people are spitting it out to him quick and getting it to him on bubbles and quick stuff off RPOs and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a absolute fool, and I'm a defensive guy, okay? So I've got to make sure, and I think our offensive coaches, and they've done a good job, are going to make sure, we call him Day-Day, Deshaun Davis, that he's getting his 15, 20 touches, whether we're speed sweeping him, whether we're getting to him quick, throwing it down field. But, yeah, he's an exciting player to watch, no doubt.
You're talking about your running game, Coach. Are you looking for your running game to dominate on offense as far as not only gaining yards, but also time of possession and helping out your defense?
Yeah, well, we just don't want our running game to go backwards. So as long as we're moving the ball and we're knocking some people off, I think any football team, and you look at championships at all levels. I mean, you do need to run the football, but I think balance is key, and I think guys that obviously that we can keep fresh, keep hitting the holes, throw in some play action pass, because your run game's good, then your play action pass game's good, and so forth. And then obviously we got to be able to throw it, but there's no doubt it's going to start with controlling some clock, trying to keep our defense off. Punting's not a bad thing, believe it or not, but we just don't want to have to punt 8, 9, 10 times in a game. We want to be able to sustain some drives, move the football, play a game of field position, and go into some second halves and have a good opportunity to win football games.
Do you sense improvement on defense?
At spots, we've got, like I said, a veteran group with a lot of reps, Phil, that a lot of them played against people like Wake Forest last year and that. So, we've got still a tough schedule, and the expectations are high. I don't know any other way to put it. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to drop scholarship football and go to the Pioneer League, and all of a sudden I'm going to expect to get our fannies and our brains beat in. That ain't the way it works. We're about high expectations. We're about improving. I think our kids, believe it or not, what makes a lot of sense is the guys that have decided to stay in the program are guys that want to be here.
Sure.
And when you want to be here, man, you got good attitudes. And when you got good attitudes, you practice better. And when you practice better, you got a chance to improve. And that's what we're looking for.
How much did winning that Gardner-Webb game at the end of last year carry over to help you
well,
guys?
We're on a win streak. I'll tell you that. Okay. So it is nice. I mean, it is nice to finish a year, and Gardner-Webb's not a bad football team. And at the time, a lot of this rumor mill was going on and stewing about what was going to happen to our program and so forth and all that. And I tell you what, the kids did an unbelievable job. This coaching staff did an unbelievable job in beating Gardner-Webb. And like I said, we hadn't really talked about that, but now that you bring it up, I may talk to the team tonight about how we did finish the year. And that's a good, good issue to set the tone, no doubt.
Glad I could help.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. You did something good while you're here.
Hey, you guys can hit win number 500 in PC history.
How about that?
Huh?
How about that?
You want to be that guy?
Yeah, let's go do it. Let's go do it early.
Early.
Yeah.
Get off to a 6-0 start. You'll be right there. Hey, thank you so much.
Appreciate
Good
you.
luck to you the rest of camp, and good luck during the season.
Thank you.
We'll be back in touch.
All right, Phil.
And we will
Appreciate
continue with more from here at Presbyterian College. We got the players coming up after the break.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Okay, we continue with Sports Talk here on a Wednesday night on the Palmetto Pigskin Tour. We are at Wild and Wonderful Presbyterian College. Coach Tommy Spangler was just with us. Now we welcome in a couple of the Blue Hose finest. Riley Hilton, senior tight end out of Nation Ford High School, third team. Phil Steele, all Big South. And Jaisi Yeldell from Silver Bluff, second team, Phil Steele, all Big South, defensive end. Both of these guys played in the Touchstone Energy Bowl, North-South All-Star game back in the day, so it's good to see them once again. And so, Riley, let's begin with you and update us on how you feel the offense has looked. You're a week into camp, and offense needs to pick it up compared to last year. How do you think it's coming?
I think everything's going well. You come into camp, and day by day you get more and more plays into the system, and so we're just trying to execute better and get better at each play we put in. And so we got a lot of young guys coming in that are bringing up the second and third string, so we're trying to move everything along, get them going. But our first string is doing very well and executing at a high level, so I feel great about that.
Any major changes philosophy-wise on the offense this year compared to last year?
I think we're going to utilize the tight end position a little more, and also
you like that.
I really do enjoy that, so really enjoying that. But I think we're doing more just executing all the plays that and knowing all the plays that we're using, so just getting everybody on the same page and getting everything going is going great.
Jicey, the Yale Dell name, very famous in football in South Carolina. Your cousin, Raleigh,
yes, sir,
played at that place down the road.
Yeah, he did. He had a pretty good career there.
He did have a good career, but you're having a really good career here at PC.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Tell me about how the defense has looked in your eyes thus far.
We're progressing. Like I said, we lost some guys from last year, like Grant Bottle, who was a good leader for us. But, I mean, we got other guys stepping up. Things like that just got to roll on. I feel like every day we're getting better. Some days better than others, but it's with growing pains with some young guys breaking up the second and third team. But I feel like things are going good so far. I think, we'll be pretty solid on defense this year.
Would you describe the camp so far as a physical camp?
Yeah, I would say it's physical and more so mental as well. Like I said, a lot of guys haven't really been through the college football camp before. So just them getting used to the meetings and the physicality of practices and the heat, and that's just going to pay dividends for us in the long run.
Well, you guys being older, you've been through the wars here. You've been with the program as it's gone through some good times and some struggles, trying to be successful in the Big South, Riley. And how do you feel about where the program is headed as you depart after this year, what their plans are and what you foresee for the future?
I see the football team going and doing great things and continuing on here at PC, and it's a big part of the community around here and the school. So I see it doing great things, and one of the big things is Coach Spangler's not going to let the execution or the level of that we play at going to let it drop. So we're going to have to execute and do everything in our power to be just as good, and nothing's going to change on our end. So I see the football team doing great things in a couple of years.
Yeah, Jicey, you have to remind people that you guys are still in the Big South for 2 more years. Your class, you got a chance to play for a championship, right, and go to the playoffs. So that's got to be some motivation for you guys.
Oh, yes, sir. It's no drop-off with the level of expectation just because, our whole situation. We're still practicing every day trying to win the Big South. That's all our goal. We know what we want to do. But like I said, we just got to take it 1 week at a time, keep progressing, keep getting better as offense, defense, and special teams every phase.
So when you look at this team as a whole, knowing where you've been with this program and where you are now as an older guy, can you be competitive here in 2018, maybe make a run at a championship?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't be competitive. We have nothing to lose at this point. We definitely use that as motivation ever since the offseason. We know a lot of people have counted us out, so that they really expect us to fold, but that's really nothing that me, Riley, and these other seniors really expect to do. That's not how we want to go out with our last year. But that's just like the message we're trying to portray in these young guys that we're not letting up for anybody. We're just trying to keep getting better and win games. That's the main goal right there.
Riley, what do you think? Has this team got the makings of a competitive Big South club?
Oh, most definitely. I think day in and day out we attack the day and we get better and better, and that's our only thing that our coaches ask, that we just get better and do the things that they ask us, and we can only get better as a team and come together. And so the things that we can do as a team are just, you can't even say we could go all the way, and you never know, and win the Big South. So I don't see why not. We were close last year at a couple of games, and if the tide would have turned at the right moment, things could have been totally different. You never know. So
absolutely. I mean, you look at a 7-0 loss to Charleston Southern, for example.
Yes,
you were competitive in some other games, and you finished the year with that win over Gardner Webb.
Yes, sir.
How much of that carried over to spring practice and into the fall camp? That taste of victory.
Well, it's always good to come off the last game with a win and propel you into the spring, and you can always do great things. And so now knowing that we're on a win streak, like Coach Spangler said, so I mean, you never know where we can go now. Win one, and next win follows, and then 3, and then 4, and we get 5 or 6. We could win 500. So that would be nice.
Sure. We are visiting with Riley Hilton and Jicey Yeldell here at Presbyterian College. So, Jicey, you break down the offense for me, facing these guys every day in practice. How do they to you?
Oh, these guys looking good every day. They're trying something different just to see what works, what really fits with them. Like I said, you got John Walker at quarterback. He's doing a great job being the leader of the offense, really just managing the offensive line, and also trying to get the receivers lined up and all that stuff, reading the defense, making the right checks and stuff like that. Offensive line, they're giving us great work up front. The defensive line, guys like Tobias Hagens, Eli Teaslink, they're giving us good work. And they got backs running hard, receivers running hard. They're looking pretty good.
Riley, same thing for you. Give me a synopsis of the defense.
Well, Coach Spangler's defense is wild, fast, crazy. So, you got to be ready for anything. But you got Jicey and Nick Garavalotti on the edges rushing, so they're pretty good. They're coming off. They both have experience and returners. Then you got Colby Campbell in the middle linebacker, leading the linebackers, which will be great for us. He's coming, filling holes, and coming downhill on runs, get pass protection. So, and you got Dirk outside at corner. So I think we'll be pretty fine. They're pretty good, and every day the offense goes out there competing against the defense. The defense is coming hard. We're going hard. So it's just great competition.
Well, we wish you guys a lot of luck. It could be a history-making year with 500 sitting out there. So like Coach said, get that early.
Yes, sir.
Get that off your back and then go on from there.
See where it go.
Hey, thank you for joining us. I know you got to get to a meeting. I don't want you to be late because you'll have to do push-ups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even though I'm an honorary coach here, they would still make you do that. So good luck and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll be watching you guys all season.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Riley Hilton, tight end from Nation Ford, and Jicey Yeldell. I think I got it right every time, from Silver Bluff. We thank the two for joining us, and we wish them the best of luck for this coming season. And that is going to do it for our stay here at Presbyterian College and this stop on the Palmetto Pigskin Tour. Tomorrow night, we will be in Charleston visiting with the Citadel folks, but we'll be down there to play golf because that's what I was put on this earth to do, really, to play golf.
Say, who's this we we're talking about?
Well, I'm a guy that doesn't like to bring the spotlight simply on myself. So I try to share. I think in terms of plurality, not singularly.
You're not sharing. You're not sharing a golf round with me. I don't get,
as in me.
Yeah.
It's just easier to say we than me.
Yeah.
We'll be down in Charleston tomorrow at
okay.
Patriots Point, wonderful golf course, and playing with my friends down there at the Citadel. Then they'll be visiting with us at Patriots Point tomorrow night. I'm sure we'll have the Coach Thompson with us and perhaps a new athletics director. And who knows, maybe some other important people will stop by. And then Friday back in the studios. And then next week, a full week, North Greenville. We'll hit that. We'll hit Charleston Southern. Coastal Carolina, and back to the Citadel next week, and then wrap it up with Limestone the following Tuesday. So that will do it from here, guys. And I'm going to shut her down and let you guys take over with SC Wild.
Thank you, Corn. We do have SC Wild coming up next year on Sports Talk. The South Carolina Department of Natural Resources again tomorrow. Clemson with a scrimmage tomorrow. South Carolina will do one on Saturday. We'll have full coverage of both of those. Until then, we will get to our SC Wild next on Sports Talk.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
And in for Phil Kornblut tonight, yours truly, Will Pelagic. We are here on Sports Talk and SC Wild with the captain, Billy Downer, and also Jay Cantrell, who's been a frequent visitor to our SC Wild segments in here to join us. Gentlemen, welcome in. How are you?
Glad to be here.
So, Captain, we are, as I understand, right in the middle of one of my favorite seasons on the hunting calendar.
It is the beginning of the South Carolina deer season.
I'm ready. Let's go.
We're ready. It's it. It's tonight. It's
I
right
know
now.
you might think this is faux enthusiasm. This is actual enthusiasm. This is the one thing I actually like when it comes to the hunting. So I'm ready.
Hey, we're good.
I'm there.
I'm glad to hear it. Hey, yes, today is the beginning of deer season.
Yes.
Got Jay Cantrell in here. He is our assistant big game program coordinator, otherwise known as Mr. Deer Tag or Dr. Deer Tag for those who may not know him by that name.
Thank you, Captain Bill.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Always glad to be here with you tonight.
I like that. It's a nice nickname.
So if you had a current license and a big game permit somewhere around July, you would have already been mailed probably a set of deer tags ahead of the season, most likely. If you have not received your deer tags, we'll talk about it later in the show, how you can get to your deer tags, but we want to kind of open up, since it's deer season today, talk about deer tags again for a minute. The tags that you would receive in the mail, tags you will get that are for free for everyone with a big game permit. You're going to get 3 unrestricted antlered buck tags, and then 8 date-specific antlerless deer tags. That's doe tags.
And for those who might have sat out last year, this is the second year where everyone needs a tag.
Absolutely. This is the second year where everyone needs a tag.
Just
absolutely.
Refresh the folks on that.
That's right. So we got Jay coming in tonight to answer questions, and a couple of things right off the bat. Jay, you want to tell us what's the status of our deer herd right now?
All right. The deer herd's great. I've been asked a lot lately, and we get this question a lot every time. This time of year, every year is, what are we expecting from this deer season? And in South Carolina, the answer is always it's going to be a good season. And barring some kind of weather event, something like that. Our deer herd, as far as our numbers, is great. It's at a pretty level point right now. Based on our surveys and models, we think we've got probably 750,000 deer in the state. 700, 800,000 deer, and that's been on a pretty level keel for several years. We topped out late 90s, really high, way up over 1 million. Things came down to a better level, and we've been kind of riding that out the last several years. So things are good. We're anticipating a great season. We've got a very long deer season here. We got plenty of deer. So, barring some of what we saw in like 2015, 2016 with some floods, tropical storms, unseasonably warm weather, those things always cause some problems for deer season.
Yeah, even though I've complained about the heat quite a bit, we've been a tad lucky when it comes to the heat. So from that perspective,
we have. So deer season in South Carolina is influenced as much by weather as anything. We've got such a long season as opposed to some states that have a really compact season. So if we don't have unseasonably warm weather, on into the fall, or any major rain or tropical events, we anticipate a good year.
Yeah, and I have a question about that because I used to live in a state in Missouri where the season was so compact and they did it closer to the winter. They did it basically at the beginning of November, and it only lasted for a couple of weeks. And after that, you could only you go out with bow and arrow. You couldn't even go out with guns anymore. Well, what is the philosophy behind having such a long season, and again, such a season that begins as early as August?
Well, the August opening, which and to kind of reinforce what we were talking about, it did open today and about half of the state, and here where we sit in Richland, it opened. But, part of our state doesn't open, the upper part of the state till mid-September or even on into October. But so that early August thing goes way back, prior to there being any kind of DNR or wildlife department. That's a historical thing. But nonetheless, in the Southeast and South Carolina, a lot of the southeastern states do have longer, more liberal seasons than a lot of the Midwest or the Northeast, and that's really because of just numbers of deer densities, deer populations, and tradition. And it just, the harvest gets kind of spread out. It's one of those things that in those shorter seasons, that everybody takes off work and it's like a holiday here. There's so much opportunity that really, when you kind of look at it and compare hunter effort across the board during the course of a season, it's pretty comparable. It's just if you choose to pack it into a small window or spread it out over time. And then it seems to be in the Southeast, it's been more of the model of spreading it out over a long period of time. But yeah, those Midwestern and Northeastern states, they have a large population of people and less deer in general. So that just kind of works to do it in that model.
We have a very healthy deer population. Again, 750,000 deer. Yeah. And hunting is the only way we have to control that population, because there aren't any natural predators really that can effectively manage the entire herd.
Right. Correct. And we've got probably about 150 to 160,000 deer hunters in South Carolina. But yeah, it's a long season, which is a great thing as far as opportunity and recreation and economics and the benefits to the state. To have from August or September or October all the way to the 1st of January to hunt this. And, it's the most popular game animal in the state, and it brings in a ton of revenue and gives people a lot of opportunities to get outdoors over a long period of time.
So how many deer are we taking a year annually?
That number kind of goes up and down a little bit, but last year, our survey estimates had us at about 185,000 deer harvested.
A little lower than normal.
Actually, we've had kind of been on a little bit of a downward trend, but that was up fairly significantly over the year before. I think our total harvest was up about 7% last year over the year before. The 2 years prior, as I mentioned, we had, with the tremendous flood and then the hurricanes, our harvest was down, those years with those events that kept a lot of people out of the woods, caused access issues. Plus some pretty unseasonably warm temperatures those years, a big acorn crop one of those years. There's a lot of things that kind of drive that. And so we had 2 years of pretty low depressed harvest. So we were kind of anticipating a little bit of a surplus, some deer that basically got a pass those years, made it through, and it paid off. Last year we had good weather conditions, good hunting conditions, and some kind of extra deer out there. And so the harvest jumped up. What was interesting, we were talking about the deer tags being the first year last year. So we had about 7% increase in the harvest in 2017 over 2016. But what was kind of cool about it when we looked at the data was the doe harvest was up about 12 or 13% over the year before, and the buck harvest was only up about 2.5%. So it appears, it'll take a few years of looking at this to see, but from first glance in 1 year of data, it really looks like the buck limit and the buck tags kind of help keep that buck harvest down, because it increased at a really small rate, whereas the doe harvest went up pretty significant.
We're talking to Jay Cantrell, the Mr. Deer Tag, as affectionately known. We talked about the change in the deer tag law last year. Are there any changes to this year's rules?
Very few, no real changes. We did alter some wording, kind of more of an interpretation on one of the regs about the tags themselves, and this was a kind of a point of confusion last year for some people on the legal requirement on how long that tag had to stay on the deer. And I think last year it read that the tag had to stay on the deer until it was processed and cut up, and there was a lot of question on what actually that was defined as. So this year is the wording, if people will see on the back of their tags, it says until quartered or delivered or surrendered to a processor or something.
Gotcha.
So it's that
much more blunt language.
Yeah, but basically no changes in the season, no changes in bag limits, no changes in anything major on the tags. We didn't, that was a huge change last year. We wanted to kind of let it soak, kind of let people get used to that before we made any big changes.
Jay Cantrell, Captain Billy Downer here with us on SC Wild here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We're going to talk about some of the interesting things involving the rules, involving state lines coming up, and also more on deer tags. Anything else you feel like we will at least need to let the folks know about when it comes to the deer season, which is well underway? SC Wild continues here on Sports Talk in just a moment, South Carolina Radio Network.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Back on SC Wild, Will Palanchik along with the captain, Billy Donner, Jake Cantrell, both from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. You had something you wanted to touch on involving state lines and the transportation.
We're talking with Jay about changes, and although there weren't any really law changes, a couple things there. Jay, tell us what you want to talk about with we hear hunters hear about CWD a lot. Let's talk first. What is CWD?
Yeah,
what is that?
I'll briefly touch on what CWD is. It's something that people probably heard of. It's called chronic wasting disease, and we obviously don't have enough time here today to get into the nuts and bolts of what that is. It takes a long time to describe, but there is a lot of information out there. People should look into it. But in short order, chronic wasting disease is what they call a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, which
holy cow,
yeah, it's a mouthful.
That's long,
but it's a lot. It's a similar disease to mad cow disease.
Gotcha.
BSE in cows. That's the short of it. So it's a very unique neurological disease that's caused by something called a prion, not a bacteria, not a virus, not a fungi, but by mutated protein, basically. Anyway, it's a disease that's been around for a little while, and it's had a lot of effects out west. It kind of started in the Colorado, Wyoming area, and then in the early 2000s, across the Mississippi River, was up in the Wisconsin area, and it's continued to kind of spread over the years. And I think it's gotten a lot more attention here in the Southeast in the last year or so, because it's popped up in Arkansas and Mississippi and Northern Virginia. And so this disease that used to be a long way away out west or up north is now getting a little closer to home. And so it's getting a little more attention, and people are paying attention to it. So it's a like I said, a very scary disease. It's always fatal.
We've had zero incidents in South Carolina.
Yeah, to reinforce that, we have had no documented cases in South Carolina, or a neighboring state. So it's not here. I don't want people to panic and think that, but it's something that we're watching. We're looking for. We're very vigilant to try to keep it out of South Carolina.
So with that in mind, what's the rule
so
change
there's
here?
A couple ways. Naturally it could get here, but it would take years and years and years for it to naturally spread from where it is. But what we're afraid of is there's other ways diseases spread, and that's by way of humans. And so one way that would be a possible way is carcasses, where we have a lot of people in this state that travel to hunt. They go out west, they go up north to hunt deer or elk or moose or whatnot. And some of the times, they're coming back home, they're successful, and they're coming back home with meat or carcasses or trophies or heads or something. And so there's a real potential there to move and transport disease, infected tissues, like a head. Somebody goes and harvests a buck in Kansas, and they cape it out like they're going to take it to the taxidermist and mount it if they put it in their truck, and they want to come back to South Carolina and take it to their local taxidermist. They're violating the law, most likely, if they're bringing it back the way they would just typically take it to a taxidermist. So there's things that people have to keep in mind, and this is on our website and in our rules and regs book. But if you're traveling to states that have chronic wasting disease, which is about half the states, I think there's 25 states in the country that have it. So it's not hard to travel and get to it. If you're coming back to South Carolina with, parts, pieces, meat, carcass, you can't have any meat with any spinal cord or neck or head attached. It has to be like quarters or boned out meat. You have to either have, that or just a hide with no head attached. The main thing, though, as I said, is like these, trophy taxidermy things. You'd have to have a clean skull or clean skull plate, basically no head type.
So basically, you need for those that hunt, you need to cape that animal out before you leave the state,
and cape it completely out, not like you would cape it to just drive to the taxidermist.
Have somebody go ahead and remove it from the skull.
The skull needs to be clean, and so and again, all this we don't have a lot of time to get into details, but the information is on our website. The main thing is to know if you're traveling out of state to hunt big game, take a look at our regulations, see which states are affected. Look at the specifics on what you're allowed to bring back and what you're not. And this is just a critical way to keep this disease out of South Carolina. It's a detrimental disease. It's 100% fatal, and there's no cure, no treatment, no prevention. And so the best thing we can do is take every precaution to not let it get here. or at least to postpone that as many years as possible while science kind of hopefully catches up and finds a vaccine or a treatment or something for it. So that's it would be very detrimental to, as we said earlier, deer hunting in South Carolina is big business. It's a big source of recreation.
A lot of pastime, a lot of history there.
There's
we want
culturally
to try to protect
and
that as much as we can.
Culturally and economically, we need to protect it,
Sure.
and so this would be detrimental. So that's just something to keep in mind. That that's regulation's been in place for about 14 years, but a lot of people are unaware of it. So we're really trying this year to kind of step the word up and get it out so people know this.
More on the tags.
Right. Let's talk about tags again. Just make sure folks remember. Again, if you had a big game permit current license, you probably already received your tags by mail. If you haven't and you go buy a license at a local Walmart or your local licensed vendor, you're not going to receive your tags that day. You will receive them in the mail a few days later, within a few days, or you can go to one of the 5 DNR offices and you can buy your license, purchase a license, and pick your tags up immediately. And that would be the Charleston office, Fort Johnson. That would be the Florence office. That would be the York office. That would be the Columbia office, downtown Columbia, or at the farmers market, and the Clemson office.
That's correct.
All those locations, you can purchase your license and receive your tags immediately before you walk out the door.
But the thing to remember, as you mentioned, that's if you have a current annual or 3-year license or buy a license. There's a large proportion of the population out there that has what we call a lifetime license or a senior or a disability license, or even youth that have, that do not have to have a license. Those folks still have to have deer tags. But unfortunately they have to call or go online and request those every year. They're free for those people, but we don't send them out.
There's no process to send those out because everyone doesn't deer hunt has a license.
Well, the basic facts on it is there's about 200,000 people that have a lifetime senior or disability license. And our estimates are about 50,000 of those folks actually deer hunt. So only about 25% of the people that have those license types hunt. And it would be very expensive, very wasteful. We'd probably be wasting $150,000 or more a year just to send everybody a set of tags.
You may not use them. So.
That they wouldn't be used. So at any rate, that's one of those things that people need to keep in mind. This, second year, and a lot of people are still getting used to this. But yeah, lifetime, senior, youth. Make sure you call or go online or go to one of our offices and get them.
There's plenty of places for you to get them.
Sure. Absolutely. Outside of your regular tag, outside of the free tags, let's go over that, Jay. Make sure everybody understands. You can purchase an additional two antler restricted, and these are antler restricted tags.
That's correct.
So basically 2 more buck tags that are restricted to 4 on one side or a 12-inch spread.
That's correct. Yeah, the 3 that you get for free as a resident have no antler restrictions, but the 2 extras do.
And these are $5 each.
That's correct.
And then you can purchase, as always, up to 4 more antlerless deer tags. And these tags have no date restrictions on them,
other than
starting date of September 15th.
Yep.
And in a lot of the state,
October 1st in a small area in the mountains. But yeah, and that's another good point. As we mentioned, about half the state opened up today, August 15th. But even in that portion, it's buck only for the next month. Nowhere in the state can you harvest an antlerless deer doe before September 15th. So that's something to keep in mind.
Gentlemen, I'm excited. I'm ready.
We're glad to be here. But let me say one thing as we're going out the door.
Sir.
If you're going deer hunting, always remember to identify your target and what lies beyond it. Make sure before you take the shot that you are shooting at what you intend to shoot at.
I think that should be something that you look at whenever you're hunting, whether it's deer or waterfowl.
Absolutely.
Anything.
But in deer hunting, particularly in low light situations, folks hunting in fields and all, always make sure to identify your target. Let us know where you're hunting. Let them know when you're planning to return.
Gentlemen, as always, a pleasure.
Thank you.
SC Wild comes back in September. We will have a couple more shows with that, and of course, get you more deep into the deer season. What do you got planned for us next time? When's that gator? Is when I really want to know.
Well, we got to get the cooking show coming up.
We'll do the cooking show.
But dove season comes in about 2 weeks. So
I'm ready. I'm ready. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Sports Talk. Will Pelagic back here with you tomorrow here on South Carolina Radio Network.